Hello, today we ask Reddit what is the biggest plot twist in real life. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video to hear all these shocking stories. With that, sit back and enjoy. Little town I grew up in had these two car dealerships on opposite sides of town, one Chevy, one Ford. They were bitter rivals. Attack ads, shit-talking salesmen, billboard wars, you name it. When the owner of the Chevy dealership died, it came out he'd also owned the Ford dealership by way of a shell company. No one saw that coming, including a lot of the higher-ups who worked at the dealerships. That sounds like the ultimate bored rich guy. Buy two car dealerships. Have the managers shit-talk each other and watch the fight. That's called the Palpatine strategy. I graduated law, and got engaged to the girl I had been with through university. We both applied for the same graduate program and ended up working in the same office in Canberra. 3 months before our wedding, I found out she was cheating on me with our mutual boss, and I broke it off with her. Long story short, it got really, really ugly, and the two of us ended up in a very bitter court case over property. Canberra is a pretty small city, and the legal world is pretty bloody small there, too, and everywhere I went I bumped into my ex. It was beginning to seriously get me down, her too, as it transpired, and I applied for an Australian government overseas development job in Tuvalu, a Pacific island with about 11,000 people. It's quite a prestigious job to get, with only 2 positions offered for a 2-year contract on a rotating basis. I was successful in the application and moved on island to start my posting. To discover that my ex was the other successful applicant. I spent the next 2 years sharing a tiny office on a tiny island with the person that I quite honestly loathe more than any other in the world. You left in 2006. I was one of the guys who replaced you on this program. Your story was told to me at the bar at the Funafuti about 100 times in the first month I was there. I cannot believe that I am now seeing this on Reddit. Holy ducking shit. Years ago my company was slowly going under, so I was looking for other jobs. I got a job with another company and put in my 2 weeks with my manager. I've been offered another job and I'm taking it. I'm putting in my notice. Manager: oh, well, we hate to lose you. Do you mind me asking where you will be going? I'm going to company. Manager: shit. Manager: I applied for that position too. I'm sorry to tell you that you didn't get it. That is one bomb-ass line though to drop on him. My grandfather's funeral. He was always a fairly reserved and distant father as far as I understood. Would fit the stereotype of a northern dockworker who comes home expecting dinner to be in the table and then goes to the pub all evening via the bookies. Anyway, an unsurprising heart attack later, we're all gathered for his funeral. We're a big, but close family, so we know everyone, including his friends. However, one guy turns up, about the same age as my dad and his siblings, who nobody knows. Long story short, turns out it was my grandfather's son. From another family. From another marriage. That went on for as long as his marriage to my grandmother. My grandfather had maintained 2 marriages over 40 years, having 7 children with my grandmother and just the one with this other woman. They knew about our family and kept away, and apparently my grandmother knew about them but kept quiet. Turns out he wasn't going to the pub every night. Was out with a friend of mine, who ran into her dad, and his other family. Damn, that has to suck. How did he explain that? He didn't. She saw him kiss the other woman, and a kid yelled "daddy" while grabbing his leg. My friend yelled her father's name. He walked over and said, "We will discuss this later." He seemingly couldn't have cared less. It was a sobering moment of reality, to say the least. I knew a woman who was going through divorce proceedings with her husband. He was always argumentative and borderline abusive towards her, certainly always shouting and demeaning. Then, just as the divorce was entering its final stages, he very suddenly died. His autopsy showed that he had a massive undiagnosed brain tumor which had been physically altering his personality. His wife felt all kinds of guilty afterwards and took it out on everyone she talked to, and lost a lot of friends in the process. On a similar note, but has a better ending. My wife's uncle is an incredibly nice guy who absolutely adores his wife. We started hearing about marital issues. He was becoming more and more argumentative, and then he hit her. They separated. He harassed her to the point that she got a restraining order. He defied the restraining order and was put in jail. In jail his issues got him a medical evaluation. Turns out he had a brain tumor. They removed it. He returned to normal, and was released from jail. They're back together with him being his wife adoring self. The one guy I worked with was having a baby. He told me about his girlfriend. Yeah, she's pretty big but she's amazing, she's the one for me. I didn't know him very well, but as he talked about the pregnancy and so forth, and I gave him encouraging words and how his life was going to change so much, we bonded a bit. His baby was going to be born right before Christmas. He missed our work party because his baby was being born. We expect him to be gone for paternity leave, but he shows up a few days later. I feared the worst, that the baby had died. It turned out his girlfriend was lying about being pregnant to spend more time with him. I didn't think much of it at the time, but the fact that he brought up she was fat for no reason must have meant she was so fat you couldn't tell whether she was pregnant or not. She showed him someone else's ultrasounds. They talked about what they would name their baby, how they'd handle taking care of it, all that shit. I don't know what she thought was gonna happen when 9 months passed and no baby. I guess it's good she came clean though. A more diabolical person would have faked a miscarriage or something. But that was seriously messed up. Shortly after the dude left, so I don't really know how he handled it. 1991, I'm 19. Just signed the lease for my first, solo apartment. Just got the first paycheck from my new job. I deposit the paycheck at an ATM, another first. I'd always gone into the bank to do it. 2 weeks later, I get my bank statement in the mail, and see with horror I have only $1.87 in my account. Way wrong. I should have at least $200, I'd been very careful with my spending. I'm freaked. I came within $2 of bouncing my first rent check. I'm literally reaching for the phone to call the bank when the phone rings. It's the police, asking if my ATM card was stolen. I check my wallet and the card is missing. My job at a theater pub came with cash tips, so I didn't use the card often, and tell them I was going to call them anyway because I was missing $200 from my account. Well, we've got your card, and your $200, so come down to the police station, they tell me. I can't figure out how they have my card and the cash. Doesn't make sense. I drive down there. Detective says someone, let's call him Bob, pulled in to use an ATM and saw a man acting suspiciously while he was using it, moving back and forth as if trying to dodge the camera. Bob says the man then left the ATM, got into a car, and drove away at high speeds as if fleeing. Bob then went to the ATM and put his card in, which popped out. Bob then withdrew $200, and then another ATM card popped out. My card. Bob's card had popped out because the crook had left my card in the ATM before speeding away. Bob realized he had withdrawn the money from my account and not his, so he brought my card and the cash to the police and reported the attempted theft. The detective gives me the description of the crook. According to Bob, it was a man 5 feet 7 inches, brown hair, round gold-rimmed glasses. I say out loud, so, about my height, my color hair, and glasses like mine, before realizing Bob was describing me. I'd never deposited a check in an ATM before, so I was moving back and forth, following the instructions on the screen, filling out the envelope with my account number, punching the amount in, etc. I then forgot to take my card out and just left because I'm a ducking idiot. I drove away at high speeds because I was 19 and that's how I drove everywhere. Worried the detective might be annoyed, I didn't tell him I was the crook. I just thanked him and left with the money I stole from myself. Somewhere in a box in my closet I still have the police report where I'm both the victim and the perp. A few years ago I got invited to a friend's engagement party. They were throwing a huge bash because they were planning on a very small destination wedding. Later in the evening, my friend's fiancé takes the mic and starts thanking everyone for being there. Sorry, Jen will be out to thank you guys in a minute, she's just having a wardrobe malfunction. He goes on to tell the story about how they met, how they were best friends and decided to get engaged, and finished along the lines of, we wish you could all be there and that we could get married right now. So we're going to. Out walks Jen in her wedding dress. I was working for a summer camp some years ago. One Sunday I was helping check campers in. One kid turns up with their dad. I look up, see this little boy, ask their name. Skylar. I find their name but it says, Junior Girls Village. I'm fairly sure that was a boy. I look up and can't decide. Unfortunately the name doesn't help. I show my boss, the camp director, and she says, so, do you know where you're going? Junior girls or junior boys? The dad promptly says, junior boys. As if the one kid who had a unisex name, with long blonde hair, who was actually a boy was somehow down as a girl in the system. I also checked in a kid whose surname was Dyson. And upon confirming it, found out his mom's maiden name was Broom. She upgraded. I was a Starbucks barista before the whole names on cups thing was big, or at least, it wasn't really practiced in my tiny store. There was this very cute guy who came in maybe 4 to 6 times a week. A little often, but nothing out of the ordinary. I flirted like mad. He flirted back. It was all great. Then he comes in with his fiancée. I was betrayed and treated him coldly from then on. A month later, 2 of him come in together and I find out that they are twins, and I'd shot down any chance I had with the single one. It sounds a bit like how my mother met my dad. My dad is a twin. Both he and his brother were members of the same fraternity when they were in college. My uncle was the social chair for the fraternity. One day my dad is going to his car when this girl stops him and chews him out for not providing rides to a social event for the girls in her sorority. My dad patently waited until she was done and then told her she could tell that to my uncle. The girl was mortified, so much so that my dad decided to make it up to her by taking her out. And that is how my dad met my mother. I work at a prison and a lady flew all the way from Nigeria to visit her brother who was supposed to be incarcerated at my unit. She speaks little English, but we tried to explain to her that the inmate was not in the system anymore. He must have been released. We called a supervisor and it turns out he was released over 5 months before. She walks away confused and come back in with her husband who speaks English much better. We tell him the scenario and he asks, well, where did he go? He doesn't have any friends or family in the US. We told him we don't know where he went, he was released and he could be anywhere. The guy, obviously confused, says, well, he couldn't have gone anywhere. Because he doesn't have any legs. So a legless Nigerian ex-felon with no ties is scooting around the US and no one knows where he is. Studying abroad in England, I planned a weekend trip to Barcelona with this girl. This is pre-cell phones. I overslept. Got to the airport like 3 hours late. As soon as I arrive, there's the girl. At the exact same time we both say, I am so sorry. Wait, what are you sorry for? Turns out she overslept too. British Airways changed our tickets for us, no charge, and we got to Barcelona a few hours late. I think the real plot twist is the fact that the airline didn't charge for switching the flights. There was a cookie exchange at my work. An odd pairing cookie was a rosemary caramel. It was so delicious I had 5 on my break. During the day I was so inspired. I worked in a bakery, I was just having the best day. All my favorite songs came on. And then I started getting these burps. It tasted like the rosemary, but something was off. I started feeling weird and tingly before my lunch break. My hands started to feel odd. Now being the mixer for the day I worked with heavy machinery and knives. Soon a manager came by and asked if anyone had some cookies. Short while later I find myself in a room with a handful of other people. All with odd issues, some were confused, others their stomachs felt off. EMTs, poison control, local police, firefighters were all cramming into the room to examine us all. Turns out that odd pairing was weed cookies. We were stoned out of our minds. With that, I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for sticking all the way until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment a plot twist you personally have experienced. Until next time.